And what we want to do is, of course, find our verbs first. So you should do that on your own as I quickly go through and highlight all the verbs in this selection. And there we are. Once we have our verbs, we know there's going to be at least 3 clauses. And we find our subjects, galia, est, and things that refer to your subject. Omnis, divisa, prepositional phrases, go ahead and stick in parentheses, in partes tres. And that is the first clause. It's wonderful how we add commas to the ancient text to make it easier for us. And we know that the qui, quod, quod words start clauses, so here's quorum. And unum is a direct object word, so it comes after your verb in colon, and that makes belgae our subject. Alium is another direct object. Aquitani is our subject. Tertium, another direct object. And that leads you to what's the subject of that? It actually has to be qui. And here we have a prepositional phrase, lingua ipsorum, and another prepositional phrase, nostra. And although this has several clauses here, at least 2, they're sort of nested, so we're going to keep it together. So we have galia est omnis, or omnis galia est divisa, in partes tres. Quorum, of which belgae and colon unum. Here we need a verb, so we can come back and grab this verb, aquitani, in colon alium. Qui would be those who. Appellantur, in ipsorum lingua Celtae, in nostra Galli.
Hello.
Hi omnis lingua institutis ligabus inter se deferunt. So we find our verb, deferunt. Our subjects, well, our subject would be he. And the adjective omnis talks about he. Prepositional phrase inter se. And then the other 3 are also prepositional phrases because these are ablative case and they tell how hi omnis deferunt. So you would start with your subject, hi omnis deferunt inter se, among themselves or between themselves, in lingua, in institutis, in legibus. Here we have another quite easy sentence. We have our verb, dividit. And the only thing that's a little bit difficult is figuring out your subject. You look at gallos and it can't be your subject because it ends in an OS. So it's our direct object. We have aquitanis as a prepositional phrase, which leaves garumna flumen as your subject. And then we continue on, and you have abelgis is another prepositional phrase. And here we have matrona et sequana, and those are also your subjects. So we have the garomna flumen dividit gallos ab aquitanis, and that's a very nice little sentence there. And then you have a second almost sentence in the same thing. So you might want to put a semicolon there and then start the matrona et sequana dividit gallos ab belgis. And that's how that goes. The next sentence is quite long, but let's break it apart, starting with our verbs. There we have a sunt, and here we have an absunt, away from, and we have commiant, and pertinent, important, another sunt, incolent, and gerund. And you should be pausing the video when we get to the new sentence and finding the verbs yourself and trying to break it apart. It'll be easier as we get more practice. We know horum omnium is a genitive, so we'll come back to that. Fortissimi, here's the issa, the most or the very fortissimi. And here's our subject, belgae. So the belgae are the most fortissimi horum omnium. And then he tells why they are, propteria quod. Basically, it means on account of because. So we're just going to put those together and say on account of, or because. You choose one. Here we have a prepositional phrase. Cultu atqua humanitata provinciae, longissime absunt. So here's our subject right there in the NT, which gives us they, because they are absunt, the farthest. This is an adverb talking about how far away they are. The farthest, cultu atqua humanitae provinciae. And provinciae there is a genitive of. Here's our connector and minime ad eos. Oh, look, there's a prepositional phrase. Mercatore saepe comiant. Command. Sorry about the pronunciation. Mercatories is our subject. And there's where this sentence breaks. Minime saepe, least often. So we have and mercatores comiant ad eos, the least often. Adqua. And here's our main verb. Because if you look at pertinent, it goes back to quae, and that is a relative clause, and it sets inside the main clause of this section. Important is your main clause, and it is, NT tells us the subject, it is they, referring back to the merchants. And they important, ea, that's our direct object. What do they important? Things, these things, which, ad effeminos, effeminando, animos. And you cannot translate this literally. Effeminandos is necessary to be made effeminate, and it doesn't make sense in English, so which make effeminate minds would work the best. And moving on. And sunt, again, sunt there has your subject, they, sunt proximi Germanis, qui, that talks about the Germanis, so that's our subject of our next clause, trans renum, and that is our prepositional phrase, incolent, and that finishes that verbs. So, qui incolent trans renum. Quibuscum, and there is our prepositional phrase, remember with the qui quod quod cum attaches to the end, so it's with whom, gerent gives us our subject, the NT there, they gerent bellum continenter, and there's an adverb telling how often they gerent bellum.